All right, we are live. This is John Nash, and we're just going to give folks a minute to come in. Jason, I see some esteemed colleagues in our attendee panel, and that's exciting.
Yeah, good to see everybody so far.
Well,
Greetings,
perhaps,
Trey. Thanks for that.
yeah,
Yeah, if anybody wanted to just say a little hello in the chat, that would be great.
yeah. Yeah, where are you logging in from today? I'm in Lexington, KY. And for today's session, we have a Q&A feature open, and we have the chat open.
Hey, Christy, nice to have you here. Thanks for that. And Miranda,
Yep, wonderful.
always good to virtually see you. Good to see you in the real as well, but also good to virtually see you.
Well, we've got 302, Jason, shall we?
Let's go.
Absolutely. Well, welcome everyone. I'm John Nash, and this is my colleague Jason Johnston, and we host a podcast called Online Learning in the Second Half, where we explore how to make online learning more effective, more human-centered. And today we're privileged to share some time with you and share what we've learned from conversations with some leading thinkers about how to balance new technology like AI, other technologies associated with online learning, with humanizing our approaches to teaching and learning.
Yep, that's right. And I'm at the University of Tennessee working on online learning there, and John Nash is at University
Oh,
of Kentucky. So part of what I believe we're trying to do, John, is really just show how we can work together across great divides, even after very difficult weekends for some people. So
that's right. That's right. We are nothing if we are not collaborative and demonstrative of our love for each other and that of online learning.
that's right. And though you and I, John, may wear different colors, but on the inside, we're the same, right?
Yes, all circuitry and chips and silicon, and yes.
That's right. That's exactly right. So, well, and that is a great segue to how, as we've been doing this podcast now for a year and a half, almost 2 years, is what's kind of struck us as we're doing this podcast. It's almost been a bit of a research project for us. We didn't really think about this on the front end. We just really wanted to have good
No.
conversations with people. We wanted to be able to put a little bit of our own thoughts out there quickly for other people to hear and to interact with. But we've seen a lot of similar challenges that people have come up with across the interviews. And so today is really a bit of looking at a few of those insights that we've found from people across the various episodes and to try to pull them together a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, and so maybe we talk a little bit about our media today, and I think that we're using a platform called Gamma, It's an all-in-one presentation deck, living document, webpage, handout. And so we will give you the link to this. And so you'll be able to have all of the live links to everything we talk about today. And if anything gets updated by us, you will get it because you have the live document.
Yep. And within there, there is a link to the podcast, of course. So if you want to take a listen to any of these podcasts after we've talked about them today.
Hmm.
And
Yeah,
John, are you
terrific.
going to put in the live link for people?
Yep, I can do that. Let me just take a second and grab that.
And while he's doing that, some of really what we're trying to do here is, as part of this webinar, is to really try to bridge some of the theoretical knowledge with practical application as well, especially as it comes to AI. AI, of course, just keeps coming up over and over again. I was at a conference yesterday, and almost every session I went to was discussing AI, and I think a lot of you have probably also had this experience. And so, what we want to do today is try to uh, look at a few things that may be relative and then get us to a place where we're going to talk about some,
Mhm.
kind of pull them together in an implementation framework, and then talk about a few action steps. But we'll
Yeah.
first kind of go into talking about some of the insights that we received from particularly four of our podcast guests. Where I think this morning is we recorded actually one this morning with Flower Darby. We're excited about that one. And
Hmm.
I think that maybe is going to be in a few weeks, episode number 33.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
So we've selected four podcast guests to kind of draw from
Yeah.
today.
And we've been so fortunate to talk to many different people with such expertise. It was really a
Mhm.
challenge to pick what four we might touch on today. But we're going to start with Dr. Brandeis Marshall, who is the CEO of Data edX. And she brings both data science expertise and years of teaching experience to our conversation about AI in education. And she really made some powerful points about AI's fundamental limitations, particularly when it comes to human decision making.
Mhm. Yeah, and around that decision making as a human, she said something like this: "You can't abort decision making as a human. You've always got to decide what you're going to do. Uh, Doing nothing is still a decision, but AI will often just kind of abort that decision making."
Yeah, yeah. She, for me, she helped us understand why AI really struggles with cultural context. And so it was really great to have her data scientist hat on when she explained that AI systems are built to find patterns. But humans and the cultural ways in which we learn and think, we resist that kind of generalization. And so she gave us a great example of how AI, for instance, can't capture the nuances between saying, say, pop in Ohio versus other parts of the country where I grew up, everything is a Coke. And so understanding these cultural contexts of communities is something that the AI is only able to do to the extent that it has been trained on that through its data sets. And so really teasing out, say, Nigeria versus Cameroon versus the Bronx is not going to be something that's going to be easily done without humans in the room to really contextualize what AI puts out.
Hmm. Yeah, and this being a limitation, we could actually turn it into a teaching opportunity, or she talks about turning it into a teaching opportunity, having students analyze AI created content critically. And one example that she gave was about using a historical figure like Harriet Tubman. It's going to get some things right, it's going to get some things wrong, but then have students examine what context is missing in there, what assumptions are made, and how the response might reflect biases in AI training data.
Yeah, we're seeing this over and over as we talk to more people about ways in which to think critically about bringing AI into the classroom, where instructors are having students look at output and have that as part of the discussion about whether the output is accurate, useful, And so I think that that's going to be something we're going to see more of, and we're going to start recommending more. She also talked about an approach to making assignments unAIable. And
Mhm.
so doing this sort of guided analysis is a way that you start to help students see where AI could be useful in their work, but also could be maybe a more of a crutch or a hindrance.
Yeah, yeah. How many times do you think that you've used that word unAIable since she told us that? I
um,
think I've heard you say it maybe uh probably 400 to 500 times maybe.
I think
So
that's fair. I think, and the reason I say it is, and when I first read um, Dr. Marshall's post on Medium, where she talks about what's unAIable, is that in the particularly in the throes of AI coming into education, say about 12 months or so ago, when we were still sort of really we're still in the throes of trying to figure this out. But
right.
many teachers I was talking to, even particularly those in the P12 arena, were really concerned about what their role was going to be. And I would say, talk about what Dr. Marshall says, which is, there are things that are unAIable, conflict resolution, critical thinking. These are things that you're still going to need to be in the room for with students, and that these
Mhm.
are wholly unAIable. And you almost see a relief fall over them as they thought, yes, I do have a role, and I always will have a role. And so, yeah, I continue to quote this piece. I think it's a really meaningful piece. I hope everybody will read it.
Yeah, and that makes me think too. This is a in our living document here. We probably should put a little resource thing at the bottom. Maybe we can do that at some point and put in that medium piece and some other things
Yeah,
as they come up today. Does that sound all right?
yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Um,
I'll find that link right now, as a matter of fact. Yeah.
okay. Yeah, and so she talks about a practical framework that she used with students, where students would actually grade the AI generated work themselves. And so the assignment might say, use an AI tool to generate a response, then analyze its accuracy, document your verification process, and assign it a grade. And so when students see AI achieving only maybe 30 to 40% accuracy, they understand viscerally why relying on it is probably not a good strategy.
Yeah, yeah. And she was also talking about an important point about workplace readiness. A lot of our students, especially the adult learners that I work with at UK in our graduate programs, they're going to be working with AI tools in their jobs, but also with the learners that I teach teachers, so their learners are going to be using AI. So by teaching them to critically evaluate the AI output is going to really be important for us to do.
Yeah, yeah, that's good. Well, should we move on to Karen Wate?
Yeah, that would be great. Let's do that.
All right. Our conversation with Karen showed how Oregon State approached AI systematically but urgently. And she's the director of course development and training. And she recognized early in 2023 that this wasn't just a new technology, it was moving faster and raising more questions than anything they'd seen before.
Yeah. And I want to say, I mean, I noticed some things that they did that we strive to do here too. And I know so I have some. I sit on the advanced committee for AI guideline setting, and Trey chairs that committee, who's in the room today with us. What I think I noticed about Oregon's state's approach was that they balanced this urgency to get in front of this with thoughtfulness.
Yeah.
So the faculty were expressing curiosity, but they're also expressing fear. Program leaders were looking for guidance. And so they just didn't rush in to say, don't do this or act restrictively, but they created an AI council. They got diverse expertise, developed
Mhm.
some clear principles, and they started, like we kind of did also, I will say, being student centered.
Yeah, exactly. Um, and they also offer up some practical tools. And I met her because we got talking about this actually at a conference because at University of Tennessee we're using some of the tools that they had banded together to create and then actually provide for free on their website for anybody to use. And it was so helpful for people that had the capacity because she had a team of 6 or 7 people developing a bunch of these tools and had the capacity to do that, and then provided it not just for their own benefit, but everybody else's benefit as well. Thanks for putting that in there, John.
Sure.
Yeah, that's a decision tree there. And so they have a AI decision tree about, when and how to integrate AI into whatever it is that you're doing, and ask questions like, does your department have existing policies? How will this impact student learning? Are there privacy concerns? What are the copyright implications? Faculty can use this framework right now then to think about how to really evaluate any technology, but they really built it for AI specifically.
Yeah. Yeah. And we also talked about AI detectors. I think their approach really demonstrated a commitment to staying evidence-based on this in their decisions. At the time of that recording, still institutions were actually thinking about adopting AI detection tools.
Mhm.
OSU took a different path. They looked at the research. They looked at in-house testing at our one institution, and like we've determined, found that these tools just don't deliver on the promise and actually contradict this student-centered approach that I think we want to all take.
Yeah. All right, then we talked to Dr. Michelle Miller. Some of you may know her from some of her writing. She has got a couple of great books out there. One is Minds Online, um, that I believe I first read because I walked into the CELT office at UK there, and it was recommended to me. I might have even just borrowed a copy from the CELT office, a physical copy from the CELT office, and read with her for the first time about some of her approaches. But she's a cognitive psychologist, so she brought a bunch of perspectives to our discussion and helped us to understand how to design more effective online experiences, really thinking about the mind. She shared some pivotal research finding that shaped her approach to course design. And this is something that I originally read in Minds Online, that discussion posts were the number one predictor of overall course success, even though that they were worth very few points and very early on in the course.
Yeah, yeah. But she leveraged it in that insight in interesting ways. She didn't just add more discussion requirements, but she built in more choices of discussion topics and then used the participation patterns that she saw from all that to identify where students might need support early and recognize discussions as students' preferred way to kind of ease into course content. It was that choice that made a big difference.
Yeah. And she gave us some concrete examples then about how we might reimagine discussions instead of this
Yeah.
traditional post once, reply twice format. She suggested that we could connect the course concepts to students' personal experiences, like having psychology students identify concepts in their favorite media or shows that they're watching. She emphasized creating opportunities for students to share their cultural experiences and building in choice into the course as well, so students can avoid sensitive topics while they can still participate.
Yeah, definitely. That was worth checking out. I hope people there's the cognitive psychology aspects to that were really enlightening.
Yeah.
Ah, this was
And
great. Yeah,
yeah, and another psychologist, really, right? So this is
yeah.
from his perspectives.
So yeah, Dr. Omid Fatui, and he didn't directly address the use of AI and his ideas on belonging, but it really raised interesting questions for the intersection of AI and learning and where we might be thinking about it as a tool to help support belonging.
Yeah. Yeah, and through his research, and we should put a link in. Sorry, John, I'm talking, so I guess maybe you'll start looking for this, or we can do it later. But to his research, but it's actually right there, so we don't even have to do it. It's there at the episode as well. We've got links to his research. Really large study of students and pretty impressive. Um, and as part of his research, he cautions against relying too heavily on technology to solve social problems and emphasizes there's no silver bullet. There's no like one thing And he urges that the current focus on belonging interventions, sometimes they can risk becoming some sort of superficial solution that just kind of happens on the top that then masks underlying systemic issues within our institutions.
Yeah, it's this interesting. He kind of alleges that the well-intentioned layering of student support services to help enhance belonging may actually just be more layers of veneer on top of underlying structural problems that probably need to be looked at
Hmm.
instead.
Hmm.
So he suggests instead of solely focusing on fostering a sense of belonging, we should examine and address the root causes of identity contingencies that threaten belonging in the first place. And so he thinks institutions should do three big things: actively listen to and understand the experiences of students, discovery, empathy; be intentional about the messaging they use to create the sense of value. So it kind of brings in an interesting communications science to this. And then embrace this culture of experimentation and evaluation. Try small wins, assess those little prototypes, and then go forward.
Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe we can start to think about, for everyone here, how we can pull these insights together into some concrete steps that you could take in your own digital learning environments. And so we want to organize these around three key areas, which is course design, student engagement, and technology integration. So first, we're going to look a little bit at some ideas around course design.
Yeah. And belonging. We're going to talk about belonging a
Yeah,
little
yeah,
bit
excuse
right
me,
at
and
the end.
belonging.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So when it comes to course design, we kind of focused on what Dr. Marshall was talking about and about the unAIable assignments, building in context requirements, asking students to connect concepts to specific situations in their workplace or community that only they would know about,
Yeah,
um, requiring personal reflection, having students explain how the topic relates to their own experiences and what assumptions they bring then to their analysis, include ethical considerations, ask students to examine the implications of decisions for different stakeholders, and then justify their reasoning
yeah,
for those decisions. And then adding cultural analysis components, having the students consider how different cultural perspectives might approach the same problem, but maybe in a different way.
yeah. Yeah, really good. What we also took away from Karen Watte and the Oregon State framework, the first thing is the syllabus. And it's funny, Jason. I think in the last couple of weeks, all I hear about, due to folks we're talking to, we talked to Flower Darby, we talked about syllabus, we talked to Catherine Denial, we talked about the syllabus. Speaking only from my experience, I think I've under leveraged the power of the syllabus in really creating guidelines that bring students into and feel a sense of belonging in the course. And here also, in the Oregon State framework, they talk about clear technology guidelines in the syllabus. It's talking about which tools are allowed, when they can be used, how they should be documented. Then thinking about the transparent explanation of AI tool use, when we're going to use AI in course development, explain to students how and why those were used. This is a little different, I think, than expecting the students to talk about their AI use. In this case, we're expanding it to think about a two-way conversation between the instructor and the students about how the instructor might have been using AI to develop course material. Thinking about multiple ways to demonstrate learning. So we should be offering students different options for showing their understanding. That's through presentations, written work, or applied projects. I think many of us understand that already. And then let's have some built-in opportunities for student choice. And so by letting students select topics or formats that align with their interest and career goals, we're able to get them to be more interested in the material that we're presenting.
Mhm. And when it comes to student engagement, Dr. Miller gave us a number of practical strategies to work with. One was connecting theory to personal experience. So rather than asking the students just to define concept X, you might ask, how have you seen concept X play out in your life, in your work? and so on. Um, and and it's probably easier said than done in some concepts, but I think that there are always ways that we can connect it with real life.
Yeah.
Second is to use media and culture as references. Have students identify course concepts in their favorite shows, movies, or podcasts. And then easy participation, creating low stakes participation opportunities. And not every interaction that a student has in a course needs a detailed rubric. And then building in student choice, which is something that we see come up over and over again, offering maybe multiple discussion prompts so students can engage with topics that resonate with them personally. And even since that we've talked to Dr. Miller about this, looking at even technologies, we've done this at University of Tennessee, looking at different technologies that are a little more social, almost in
Mhm.
nature, or Web 2.0 in nature, where discussion happens a little more organically, and it gives students a little more agency in asking questions and creating threads versus this idea of kind of a single threaded discussion post that always has to be started by the teacher.
Mhm. Yeah, and Jason, the easy participation aspect there reminds me of a conversation we had with Flower Darby on and her book on small teaching online, and the idea that the idea behind the small teaching is that these are evidence-based, science of learning practices that are small and easy to do, but are recommended for their outsized effect on student learning.
Hmm.
So these are things that are easy for students to do, but bring greater returns. And I think that's another way to think about those.
Hmm. Yeah. Good memory, John. I like that. I'm glad you got up that word outsized, because I recognized it when she talked about it, and I was like, oh, I got to remember that outsized effect, and I
Yeah,
really like that.
yeah, I like that a lot. It reminds me of well, Steve Ehrman back in the day with the TLC group, was it that? But talked about a low threshold, high impact
Mhm.
practices. Same sort of thing. That reminded me of that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. And then a couple of things on technology integration that we took away from Karen Watte at Oregon State. I think their framework really gives us some clear steps. First of all, starting with this decision tree. Um, I think even at UK, we could be thinking more clearly about how colleges and departments want to be talking about AI. We've only just started having a conversation in our department, for instance, about what our collective values and ethics are about doctoral students using AI in qualifying exams. We're just now starting to talk about this. And
Mm.
so, department policies, are there plans inside departments? Do they align with the institutional guidelines that are getting set up? How does the technology improve student learning? This is a great question when it comes to qualifying exams. Is it even allowed? Uh, Privacy and copyright, of course, worrying about examining data security and whether the proper use is going on there. And then when students use these tools, have them keep a clear record of how and why they're using them and whether they were helpful. You can build that into your curriculum. I'm starting to do that in my research courses. And then this idea of transparency, the recommendations here are explaining, tool choices to the students. So maybe if you're choosing certain tools or you're having them engage in prompts with an AI tool that have the students go down a certain pathway of learning, share your reasoning for using that specific prompt or this specific platform. Create some clear usage guidelines specifying how and when they should be used. When do we want you writing on your own, and when do we want you consulting the machine, as it were? Building in alternatives when needed, so backup plans for students who can't access certain tools, and then, of course, monitor as you can and adjust. So check in with the students, ask them what's working, what's not working, what should we turn up, what should we turn down. These are uh, low threshold ways to get some high impact information to help improve the cycle of learning.
And John, you are answering all of Miranda's questions.
Oh no.
Oh no, he says. That's
Awesome.
great. Yeah, that's good. And then with Dr. Fatuhi, uh, and this idea of belonging, which we we just believe is so important. And we call our podcast Online Learning in the Second Half. The idea is that what do we want out of our online learning experiences in the second half of life, assuming that it's kind of at a midlife right now. It knows it's come to this point. We know how to deliver content online. We know we've got the technology is mostly there in so many ways. Students can connect, but what do we really want out of online learning for the second half? Just more of the same, or do we want to kind of go deeper and better? And I think one of these spaces that is so needed right now is belonging. And and so really kind of the two aspects of that. One is balancing tech, understanding that technology integration in consideration of social contingencies, and really thinking about this as a framework for all that we do, that this is not just a place of greatest efficiency or of our latest innovation space. This is a place where students come in part to belong to something and to belong to one another. And so how are we going to balance our technology in order to see that happen? And then what's your role in this? How are you improving or worsening the social system these students are supplied with to succeed? And I think that's a important
Yeah.
question for all of us as leaders in this space to be
Yeah.
thinking about. So taking action then, where should we start? And I think what we'll do here is we're going to go through these, and then we'll get some opportunities to kind of hear from people. And we might, I don't know, we don't, yeah, I don't know how we want to do this exactly, John, but you can be thinking
Yeah.
about that.
Yep.
But in terms of taking action, here's some suggestions, given all that we've talked about today, kind of highlighting each one for each one of our podcast guests. Maybe review one assignment using the unAIable framework that we provided. You can take an existing assignment and add requirements for some sort of maybe personal context and reflection. You could build in elements that maybe require more human judgment or human experience. And I think including opportunities for some sort of ethical consideration, making or kind of really helping the students to make an ethical decision and then support that decision in a particular direction.
Yeah.
Um,
Do you want to trade off on these, or do you
sure.
want to?
Why don't you go number two?
Sure. Well, we'd like to see if you can give a try to reimagine one discussion activity using Dr. Miller's strategies for connecting with the student experiences. So replace a generic prompt with questions that connect to student experiences. This reminds me of sort of a sub bullet to this is start your course off with the kinds of surveys that get you in a place where you know your students a little better and they get to know you. Once you know your students in that sort of way, you can then replace generic prompts with questions that connect to their interests and experiences. Two, you can reduce the emphasis on grading and increase the focus on authentic interaction, and maybe use participation and quality of participation and coaching to get that authentic interaction going, and then adding options for students to choose how they engage. Even dare I say though, I mean, AI can be helpful to the teacher here in helping think about once they know some things about the students, and then they can think about expanding options for students on how they engage if you're sort of at a loss there.
Yep. And as we look at the example of Oregon State and Karen Wate in terms of this decision tree, so apply the Oregon State decision tree to maybe one technology choice and work through their framework for one tool you're considering, document your reasoning and clear guidelines, plan how you'll communicate this to the students, um, and um, and maybe within this too, just you could have some critical thought about their decision tree. We did this within our unit, and we looked at their decision tree, and then we talked about how it worked with us. And it didn't fit us maybe exactly in terms of the flow, the way that our system and our team works together. So we rearranged a few things. We got a few things slightly different, and that itself created a good opportunity to talk about how we implement technology.
Yep. And then lastly, we want to encourage folks to experiment in shifting their interventions for belonging to help improve these systems of non-belonging that might be based on social contingency. So build in course opportunities to listen. You notice a thread here around sort of this discovery and empathy opportunities. Listen to what students are interested in, what they're experiencing, and then be intentional about the messaging you use when you go back out to them. So, a little closing before we maybe open up to a chat. I think want to remember what Dr. Marshall emphasized, which this is not about restricting technology use, but it's about creating better learning experiences. So we encourage everyone to start small, be transparent with your students about what you're doing, bring them in as co-designers in this learning journey together. As Dr. Miller says, we need to be on same side pedagogy. We need to be together in the learning journey, not adversaries, and build those connections.
Yeah, and the future of online learning isn't about choosing between technology and human connection. It's about using the technology thoughtfully to enhance human connection and learning.
Yeah. Yeah. And so with that, we'd like to maybe throw it open to questions or comments. We're in a position where if you want to raise your hand, I believe that our hosts uh, can make that happen for you.
Yeah, I think we're opening up the gates
Yeah,
here,
we're opening
John.
up the gates. Yeah.
We're allowing people to unmute if they want to.
Yeah. Okay. Mics are being unmuted. What's on your mind as we bring these ideas about? And we can start even with a little chat poll first if we want. So, is there a strategy from today's session that you're most likely to implement first or recommend to others to implement? It might be unAIable assignments, it could be new discussion approaches, belonging strategies. And if you don't like that poll question, I've got more.
I'm not quite. Am I unmuted?
You are.
Okay, yeah. Hey guys.
Hey.
Hey, Trey.
Um, okay. I don't know. I don't think my video is showing, but if it is, I hope I don't have a silly look on my face. So great. Lovely to listen to both of you talk. I guess just of all the things, I'll start with you talked about um, Michelle Miller and discussion boards and ways that students can interact in ways that bolster community engagement and online learning that kind of break out of, Jason, as you were suggesting, this maybe kind of stale mold of how we imagine this discussion board thing as maybe just it's a part of the it's just a part of the furniture that we need to rethink in online learning. And what I hear from a lot of folks is that this feels like one of the areas that they want to reimagine anyway, because it's kind of one of those kind of most common um, focus areas for thinking about making online learning more engaging. Like, is this the only way that we can get people to sort of, in a low threshold, formative way, engage with each other? But then also, we're hearing a lot about how this seems to be one of the most kind of in danger areas to talk about AIable or unAIable areas for kind of leaping over the important work if kind of AI gets leveraged in ways that aren't very productive. And just as an open question, what are y'all's thoughts on not like preventing AI use, but just in the future of ways of students interacting in these kind of low threshold ways, specific ways you've seen that happen that are really compelling, where in online asynchronous environments, we can still create that sense of camaraderie and interaction where learning is also happening, but it's maybe not like that traditional discussion board.
Yeah. Yeah. What are you thinking, Jason? I have a thought or two, but yeah, I'll let you
Yeah.
start if you want.
Um, yeah, and I think one thing that I kind of alluded to is maybe rethinking some of the technologies we use, honestly. Now, and we're a Canvas institution. I know UK is as well. Strangely, Canvas was the new kid on the block not that long ago, it felt like. And now it has become this kind of like sometimes almost like a stranglehold of what we can and can't do with the students, you know what I mean? And so I think we need to be rethinking like outside of the box and outside of the LMS probably. And it's a new Moodle, yeah. Um, and partly because I think it's set up in such a way that it's very kind of linear and not necessarily conducive to student agency in that way. So we're experimenting with a few, and I know you guys are as well, of external kind of companies that maybe kind of flex it just a little bit more. A company called Inscribe, another one called Harmonize that I think is being used at UK, at least some, another Yellow Dig that might be used there, that just kind of allows for a little bit more flexibility. So I'll say that one, I do think that there's some limitations sometimes on the technology itself that we have to think outside of. And then two, of how we think about our courses. So, on top of this, post once, reply twice, we often put in, um, uh, and I've done the same thing, put in like dates on those things. So post once by Thursday night, reply twice by Sunday night, 11:59 p.m.
Yep.
And so what everybody does, on Thursday night, they put their one post in, come back on Sunday night and put their two replies in, right? Bang, bang. And I think one of the ways that I am trying to break out of, and still have a little bit of life as I'm teaching an online class, is think about ways that we can continue that conversation day after day in small ways. And so rather than a big post, how do we keep a conversation rolling with
Mm.
people like we would in a text thread or in a Facebook post that's kind of taken off for the week, something we want to talk to people about. So those are the two things I was thinking about, John.
Yeah, I'm thinking about ways in which, and it's a fun, for me, this is a fun, tricky design challenge to say, how do you make discussions, even threaded discussions, asynchronous threaded discussions, unAIable? And my mind runs to video a little bit, I think, and then it also runs to what you prompt. So I could see, well, some people on this call, this webinar know, I use a tool called Unruler at times to have students reflect using video on their phones about what's been challenging in the work they're doing. And so two things are happening there. One is the questions that they have to answer are pretty much, they're not totally unAIable, but they're mostly unAIable because we're not asking fact-based stuff. For years, I wrote in prompts for discussion, asynchronous threaded discussions that were based on the readings and maybe reflection. Pretty AIable stuff. I mean, looking at, quoting, include one quote from the author, blah, blah, blah. So, but if you have to reflect on how something was hard, or maybe how an issue you had was sort of emotionally taxing and what you learned from it, you could sort of AI that. But if you have to say it into a video, then I think that gets a little more authentic. So I'm sort of running in that direction. I haven't perfected this thinking yet, but I think that's the direction it might have to go.
Yeah.
And if also professors and lecturers and teachers can also be on that video in the other direction with the same level of honesty and growth and reflection, I think that engenders a sense of trust.
Yeah. And we got a room full of smart people that have also
Yeah,
been thinking about this too. So we don't want to be the only voices here. If Trey, if you have anything else to add to that, or if you want
yeah.
to answer your own question, or if other people want to jump in there too, what do you think? Trey says he will not answer my own. That's good. All right.
Fair
Well, we
enough.
can continue to have conversation, but I think it's a great
Yeah,
question. I
it
think
is a
it's
great question.
I think that space, especially in asynchronous classes, is something that we're thinking about a lot. Yeah.
I I think, oh, we do have a Q&A.
Yeah. We have one from
Miranda
Miranda.
Hines. Yeah, as use of AI is expected to grow, it seems beneficial for faculty to consider how to help students explore it and to use it purposefully and effectively as they enter the workplace. At the same time, there are discussions about the ethics of using AI. Read an article today discussing how to ensure academic integrity with student use of AI. What are your thoughts on that? Miranda, was that in the Chronicle today? I saw the top three where cheating has become normal. AI may ruin the university as we know it and make AI part of the assignment. So sort of these two things out of three. Yeah. Um, so what are our thoughts on that? Um, I think I'm trying to talk more with my students about where two levels. One is from an instructional design standpoint, I've been able to, I think, use generative AI as an instructor to create more engaging in-person activities that do not use AI in my online courses. So breakout rooms, things we do to meet a learning goal that would needs to be, and leveraging, say, John Hattie's notions of active learning and how you create learning goals and activities that meet those learning goals. It's been very helpful in that regard. And so I'll talk with my students how that might have helped me do that, but we're not going to use AI in this exercise, but it helped us get to this point.
Mhm.
On the other side of that, and that's in a research course, in a design thinking course that we teach, um, we talk to students about places where AI might be useful and AI doesn't have any role at all. For instance, we don't want students to be thinking about using AI as a substitute for a human they would interview who is experiencing a challenge. They could very easily sort of fake that, talk about, create a persona of a person experiencing a particular challenge and then let me interview that person. That would be spurious and not useful at all. But once the students have done their actual human intelligence work, talked with other humans, sort of started to get some sense of things, we've brought AI in a structured way to say, well, how might this let us see some insights that we might have missed in our first synthesis work? Or how might this help extend a brainstorm session that you've already done with your team? So I think it reminds me of my law professor in my doctoral program is this principle of law, but it's time, manner, and place. I think we have to be thinking at all times whether this is the right time, what manner are we going to do it, and is this the place to do it? And if the answer is no on any of those, then it has to be rethought.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree with that. And I think, and I was thinking about it a little bit more, we've got our kind of what we can change on the micro level for these kind of things, both about academic integrity as well as how to help students, what we can help maybe on more of the mezzo or the university level, which I know that you're at, Miranda, and wondering about some of the almost the trajectory or almost the history that people had. 2 years ago, this ChatGPT got unveiled. The initial reaction with rules, right? All the teachers came out with like they wanted to make rules about everything. Then we kind of moved into an area of people started to talk about using it in assignments. And then most of our schools started to talk about ethics and overall guidelines for departments in the school. Um, and I feel like, and I'm just starting to hear about this groundswell now of people talking about, okay, now that we've kind of settled these things, we've got ethics, we've got a few rules, some of these rules that show up with good communication in your syllabus, like when to use it, when to not use it, building it into some of your assignments so students maybe get some opportunity to use it. And now one thing that I'm starting to hear about is what does it look like to have AI literacy? It's, although it's still moving quickly, um, we can get our hands around it just a little bit more now than we maybe could have a year ago or 2 years ago. And what does it look like to build AI literacy for our students? And like, what are the top 5 or 6 things that they should know as they are coming into this class and going out of this class and going into the world? Because most of our students that are starting college right now aren't getting any of this, right? Some of the students probably are getting it early, like in elementary school and so on, but I don't think high school students are getting this. And then at the same time, what do our teachers need to know in terms of AI literacy? You know, what are the top 5 things that they need to be able to understand when it comes to AI literacy? And so I think we're at that space now that we've got our hands around a little bit more, that we need to start being a little more systematic about what people know and don't know.
Yeah. I just came from a conference of international teachers in P20 or P12 space, really, but that, generative AI is now baked into WhatsApp, Facebook, Snapchat at the very top. Ask Meta AI, blah, blah, blah. It's right there. And you don't have, it's not asking, I mean, it treats it like ChatGPT. You can just, it shows up in a post from my friend about, I don't know, their dog, but I can now go ask AI about writing an essay. And so you're right, Jason, there's a lot of blue ocean in front of us right now with regard to capacity building around literacy, PD, around this sort of literacy. I don't think we're talking enough in our hallways in the university about how we are using it as teachers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And thanks for that doc there, Trey. We'll add that to the
Mhm.
slides as well into our resource
Yes.
area there. Can we get this chat? Can we, oh yeah, I can save the chat. Oh, and a short one for students.
Yeah.
Perfect. Well, I think, I think we need to close off here. Thank you very much. Tia or anybody, are you saying any words of closing here?
We just wanted to say thank you.
That is all.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Thank you for the invitation. Great to see so many familiar folks, and good to have the conversation with you all. Please reach out if you have any questions or anything like that.
Yeah.
So
Jason, you want to put your email address in the chat? Please reach
sure.
out anytime if you want to talk about anything further.
You got it.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks. Bye for now.
Good weekend. Bye.